We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest this morning is John Harris. He is with the Tennessee Handgun Association. Nice to have you on, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's glad to be here. The number 737-7587. Talking about some of these recent incidents involving weapons, the laws here in Tennessee. We've got some callers that waited through the break. Let's go to Greg. Greg, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hey, Greg, what's on your mind?
Hey, it's a great topic. Thanks for having the guest here to talk about this.
And I'm sorry, Tennessee Firearms.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I believe, I think that people have always, like the gentleman there was saying, that a big percentage of Tennesseans all have concealed carry permits, and we've all been carrying guns into Titans games and movie theaters for a long time.
I believe it. I believe it.
Nobody's known it, right?
Right.
Now, this Antioch shooting, there were people there probably had handguns on them, but you know what? That guy was not a threat to anybody. That's why their guns were never drawn. I've spoken to some people that were actually at the movie theater, and what happened was that when the police officer came into the movie theater, that guy dropped his little plastic gun and ran out the back door. So when he went out the back door, he wasn't armed with any plastic gun, any fake gun, to where the police are saying that, well, you don't know, they all look real and all that stuff. He didn't even have it with him. He left it in the movie theater.
Well, that's correct. Now, what did happen, and I wouldn't say there was no threat. At that point, what he came out with was this backpack, and there was concern there was explosives in the backpack. Keep in mind, there was an incident where the officer inside the theater felt the whoosh whoosh of the pellet gun. This is an airsoft weapon, I think, that was used in that.
It was not a lethal firearm.
Not a lethal firearm. But again, as we watched it, and you're correct, he did not have the gun out back. By the way, there was that other incident just the other day where the DA, Ray Whitley, came out and said the shoot was good, where there was an individual on a bridge. I don't know if you saw this, where he was up there, and they were trying to talk him down, and he pointed what turned out to be, I think, another pellet gun. They didn't know, but he was putting it to his head, and here, shot him in the leg, he fell and died. I'm sorry, once again, pointing a gun or not complying with law enforcement when they think you may have a weapon or a bomb or a gun, not a smart move.
No, it's not. But the same could be said for pointing a firearm at an armed citizen,
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right along those lines. Yeah, if you feel as though your life's in danger, you have a right to defend yourself. Again, Tennessee Firearms Association. I said Tennessee Handgun Association. But it's all under the umbrella, so you understand. Let's go next to Paul. Paul, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Nick. How you doing?
Good, Paul. What's on your mind?
Well, here's this liberal Democrat calling in, and they're gonna paint me as a gun hater. I ain't a gun hater. I believe everybody should have a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol in their house to defend their family, Nick. I am not for everybody walking around with guns on their side. Wyatt Earp and Pat Masterson knew 150 years ago that guns and alcohol don't mix. Now, the gentleman right there said that it's illegal to drink alcohol with a firearm. Well, Nick, you know that everybody that may be the law, but everybody don't do that. If they disregard that, they drink with a gun anyway. So my point is, Nick, this is a broad issue. Right now, I think we need to worry about people with mental illness with guns. All right, we need to address that, and don't give me that mess, Nick. That we need to just enforce what laws are already on the books to stop people with mental issues get guns. Evidently, that ain't working. We need to tighten down right now on people with mental issues where they can't get a handgun. Because you know what? There's a lot of nuts out there walking around with guns, and they are, Nick. There are a lot of nuts out there walking around with guns, and they will shoot people. And it's just that simple. And this is a broad issue, but I'm going to attack that corner of the broad issue. We need to get more strict with gun control with people with mental issues.
Okay, and that's a point I was going to bring up. Let me just hit this real quick, and I want you to address the mental issue part as well. But the first part, and we heard about it from Greg, I mean, and he's telling the truth when he says, well, before any of these laws were even brought up, people probably were concealing weapons as they go into parks, and they probably still are, which means they're breaking the law in some cases, okay, as ambiguous it is. So that's why I think just because, we always say, well, there's a lot of law-abiding gun owners and all this, but if they're going to sneak weapons in places they shouldn't, then I believe they may sneak a drink in places they shouldn't, I mean, you can look at it both ways. Now, with regard to the mental illness, I do know that in so many, and we had the sheriff on earlier this week, the vast majority of a lot of these cases, and criminals in general, it's mental illness involved.
It is.
And in some cases, there have been people that have legally purchased weapons that had some red flags in the past, but wasn't part of what was searched. Do you have any thoughts on how we can prevent someone who maybe has some of these flags for having some mental issues from legally buying a gun?
That's a very, it seems like it ought to be a simple problem to fix, but it's an extremely complicated one to fix.
HIPAA and everything else.
HIPAA and everything else. If someone has had a court conclude that they are mentally incompetent, there's a public record of that, and you can search that and it shows up.
Yeah.
If you have a situation, and I can give you an example that we've seen recently of a lady who has been involuntarily committed twice. Involuntarily committed, which means she's an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm to herself or another, and two doctors have to conclude that.
Yeah.
Those records aren't public. And so if she were to go in and fill out the form to buy a gun, and it's basically an honor system on your mental health on those forms, she could answer, no, I'm not mentally ill, and not disclose that there were two involuntary commissions, both involving risk of injury. And there's really no way for the government right now to run that database because of privacy laws. The other problem with this mental illness component is there's a lot of people out there that have mental illness issues that really think they're okay. They quit taking their medicine, they think they're normal, and they sort of cycle in and out of stability.
That's right.
It's another problem and aspect of it that's hard to regulate in terms of who's crazy and who isn't. There's the problem of is the episode of mental illness short-term or chronic, long-term. So, for example, you could have someone that, as a result of the loss of a parent, a spouse, or a child, has a severe depression and is given mental illness type drugs. Well, they get over that and go on with a normal life. Well, is that a permanent black mark on their ability to ever have a gun in the future? And so there's a lot of variables to this mental illness component, but there is no question that when you see these multi-victim shootings in public, like the one with the news reporters in Virginia, it's almost always turns out to be someone that had access to a gun, that had a mental illness. Whether or not they had it when they acquired the gun is really immaterial.
No, right.
Yeah, and so it's a very complicated problem unless we become thought police.
Yeah, and that's the problem, you know, thought police, and then how do you really go after someone or deny them something before they've committed a crime or done something wrong? And the truth is, the vast majority of people who do suffer from whatever degree of mental illness are not violent people.
They're not?
They're not violent. And so you make a great point, and I understand where, Paul, you were going on that, but he's right. It's complicated. That doesn't mean it can't be addressed somehow or maybe looked at, but
it can be improved.
It may be improved, but there are privacy rights and other issues that come into play. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, more of your calls. Ross and others on hold, stay there. The lines are open if you want to jump in, 737-7587. We'll be back with more right after this. Yeah.